happen through television is that when we look at the television screen, and this isn't just even this on one hand is talking about the frequency level, but just as at the television screen period, when we look at it, it's really just a flat screen. And if, in fact, we see a flat screen as reality, then we can only perceive, as a result, we are training our mind to see something that is flat as having three dimensions. Because when we look at the television, it looks like it's three-dimensional. It looks like there's background, there's foreground, and left and right, up and down. So we think that, but if we continue to watch television, we are basically training our eye. This, again, gets back to the concept of reclaiming our sight. It's training our vision to perceive something that is flat as being real. Now, what happens is over time, and this is part of the reason why television is so powerful, is that people who continue to train their eye in that way, when they actually see reality around them, they don't see it as three-dimensional anymore. Everything becomes one-dimensional. And ultimately, as human beings, and this gets back to the Creator series, as human beings, the more in tune we are to the multidimensional level of reality, the more options we have at impacting our reality. Now, if in fact we can only if we only perceive reality within one dimension or even two dimensions, which television really programs the eye to do, then therefore we will be limited to operating within a one-dimensional or two-dimensional level. And that's very limited, right? However, if in fact we understand as human beings we are multidimensional, then we realize that we have much more power and much more say in terms of how we choose to manifest, in this world, what type of reality we want to manifest on this planet. So one of the things that has happened with television is there's this concept that people talk about, the dumbing down of society. Yes, that is part of it, but also there is a dumbing down of your vision to be able to perceive reality for what it is. If in fact you can only see things one-dimensionally, the only way that you can operate is on a reactive basis. And when we are in a reaction mode, that is not a creative mode. The more dimensional awareness we have as human beings, the more creative we can be. And whenever we come across institutions or programs that limit our ability to perceive on a multidimensional level, we have to recognize that is in fact a form of manipulation, and we have to shield ourselves from that.
Absolutely, we are definitely being limited in regards to sight, even language. In many cases, even our thoughts in that sense are being limited with all the political correctness and whatnot. But also, I want to ask you a little bit about things, let's say, hidden in the background, for instance. We talked about this idea of slowing down and really look at something that is in a central view of let's say, a television series or a film or what have you. But how about things that are hidden in the background? Is that also something that you pay attention to when you screen one of these films, for instance, before you show it to one of your children, that you feel that it's also important to see what goes on around the main kind of event, so to speak, in the film?
Yes, and it reminds me of someone who has tunnel vision, because if you have tunnel vision, you can only see, you may be looking at something that is massive, but if you only have tunnel vision, you can only focus in on one particular thing, and by doing that, you miss out on the massiveness of what you're really seeing. So that type of orientation in terms of vision, the people who actually put these programs, because that's what they really are, these programs, they create these programs to manipulate human consciousness. They understand that most human beings don't perceive the full breadth of what they are taking in. They literally their vision has been impaired to where they can only perceive certain aspects of what's presented to them. And one of the things, one of the manifestations of that in terms of how we're being manipulated is oftentimes you find that there is more information that is relevant to the dialogue inside of a film. There's more information in the background than there is with the actual character who's speaking the words. And that is to say that we shouldn't just focus on the character who's speaking. We should also be looking at the full breadth of what all the information that's presented in that scene. And oftentimes what we find is that what is in the background has significance in terms of what's really being transmitted on a subliminal level.
Absolutely. And, when we talk about, there's a difference also between films and certain series, for instance. It's all dependent on how much money goes into when they produce a film compared to a regular television series. But with having said that, do you think that all of this kind of manipulation is consciously put into these films, or is it a possibility that there are things that are put in one sense that are either there because the creators think that it's funny, and they in that regard don't really know what they're doing, and that could actually imply that they themselves in some way are manipulated, and they're just carrying on this manipulative agenda, if you know what I mean. But do you think it's do you separate that at all, or do you think it's all the same and it's all consciously put in there? What's your take on that?
Yeah, now that's an important point, and the way I perceive it is that there are, in fact, people who participate in subliminal manipulation of human consciousness, but are unconscious as to what they are doing. Meaning that they themselves are running a program.
Yeah, exactly.
It reminds me of the movie Matrix. Like everyone, most people who've seen that movie, and it's a very popular movie, they perceive Neo to be this Christ-like figure who saves humanity in a sense. And what I think about is that ultimately, how did Neo come into his Christ state, if I can call it that, or his hero-ship? How did he come into that? And when you really look at the film, you realize that he came into his understanding of who and what he was through programming. He sat in a chair, and they gave him images and information into his conscious mind that literally put him on course to become what he was. So ultimately, he ran a program to become the one. He didn't evolve into the one through his own spiritual evolution. He evolved into the one through manipulation of his consciousness via technology. And I'll talk about this in my upcoming film, that ultimately the technological, it's almost like the techno-religio ideology, to where within that film, it's through technology that he comes into his hero-ship. And so this goes back to, the concept that we were talking about before, that there are people who may even think that they're doing good in their hero-ship, but they're really just running a program that was but now, however, I should also state that does not absolve the individuals who consciously wish to manipulate human consciousness in certain ways, and they consciously put in embedded images, embedded terminology, subliminal terminology. And a lot of times, what we find is that even the dialogue, if you listen to the dialogue without watching the video footage of any particular film, you will get a general idea about what they're talking about. However, when you look at the actual video footage and then you cross-reference that to the dialogue, you realize that there's a deeper story that's being told. And inside my next film, I use a Star Trek franchise as an example of how those types of things are done. Because ultimately, when you look at everything as a whole, again, this concept that if you perceive things multidimensionally, then you will begin to pick up the different levels of subliminal manipulation, and then you realize that a lot of it, and probably most of it, cannot just have happened by accident. That they literally had an agenda to put these things in, because it's done in such a masterful way. That's the thing. Oftentimes, that which is whenever there's intent behind something, oftentimes the way in which that whatever it is manifests, you realize that there is a certain kind of mastery that goes along with it. Now, if something just is kind of thrown in the background and it doesn't really fit, and then you analyze and you say, okay, there's a subliminal, well, that's one thing. But when you realize that how deep it is in terms of as a scientific practice, they have this down to a science. And when you realize the science and you recognize what the science is and how they literally put these different kinds of levels of mind control, mind manipulation, subliminal messages inside films and videos, you realize that this cannot be by accident. This is by design with a certain intent, and that intent always goes back to the manipulation of human consciousness.
If we talk about your recent project a little bit more than the Borg agenda, what do you think is the main agenda right now? If we talk about this in the terms of technology, where are we going, and what are they trying to do in regards to, I guess, kind of launch this into our world at this particular time? We see a lot of this. Just as you pointed out in regards to the Matrix, that it's a kind of we're getting desensitized to technology. It's in one way being a kind of brought into our lives, and we should become more accustomed to it. How do you view this, and what do you think is the main agenda in regards to technology, Lenon?
Yeah. Now, in this next film, I'll make it clear that technology, traditionally speaking, in terms of the evolution of human beings on the planet, is mainly functioned to assist us in our creative efforts. Meaning, and I can give you an example. Just I know, as a musician, I'm sure you can relate to this. That the flute. When I pick up the flute, I am picking up a piece of technology. Right.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
That's fine. Right. And then through my own devices and through my own skill set and through my own understandings of certain principles, I can then use that technology to create something that may or may not have profound impact on human consciousness. And ultimately, my goal is to have a positive effect on human consciousness. So that's one